Let's talk about one of the biggest, most stressful decisions a family can make, choosing a school. I mean, it can literally shape a child's entire future. Now, we usually think that having more choices is always a good thing. But what if the way those choices are presented is actually setting us up to fail? Today, we're diving into how these tiny, almost invisible nudges can completely change the game.
Okay, let's start right here. This is an idea that pretty much everyone on Earth can get behind. Back in 1944, FDR called it a fundamental right. We all agree on the goal, right? A good education for every kid. The problem, as always, is the how. How do we actually make that happen?
And this is where things get complicated. On one side, you've got people like the economist Milton Friedman. His argument was, hey, let schools compete. It'll make them all better, and the students who need it most will benefit the most. But on the other side, critics are worried. They say, wait a minute, this is just going to drain money and talent from the public school system, leaving it in the dust. It is a really passionate debate.
So here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll look at the big promise of choice. Then, we'll see a real-world example of when it goes horribly wrong. After that, we'll see the amazing power of a simple nudge, talk about fixing a totally broken system, and finally, look at how we can design better choices from the very beginning.
So the idea behind school choice seems so simple, doesn't it? More options means better results. But what we're learning from behavioral science is that it's just not that easy. The environment we choose in, what the experts call choice architecture, can have a huge impact on what we decide. So the real question is, does just throwing more options at people actually help them?
All right, let's look at our first case study to see how this plays out for real. We're going to Worcester, Massachusetts. Because of the No Child Left Behind Act, a huge opportunity opened up for thousands of families. But the results were, well, let's just say they were not what anybody expected.
The setup seemed perfect. The government labeled 12 of the city's 50 schools as in need of improvement. And just like that, 4,700 students, that's almost 20% of the entire district, were told they had the right to transfer to a better performing school.
So, you've got thousands of families who've basically been handed a golden ticket to a better education for their kids. How many do you think took that offer after 6 months? The answer is 1. Just one single student transferred. It's unbelievable.
So you have to ask, what on earth happened? It wasn't because the parents didn't care about their kids' education. No way. The problem was a classic case of bad choice architecture. It played right into a powerful human tendency we all have, the status quo bias. Basically, when a choice is too complex or too much of a hassle, our default setting is just to do nothing at all.
And this explains exactly why it was such a hassle. The school system, whether they meant to or not, created this maze of what one person called friendly discouragement. First, they kind of downplayed how bad the schools were. Then they emphasized all the uncertainties. And then they made parents jump through all these hoops. You had to meet with your principal, then go to another meeting, and only then could you file the super complicated paperwork. Each step was like a little nudge saying, just give up. It's easier to stay put.
Okay, so we've seen how bad design can make a good idea fail completely. But what happens when you flip that? What happens when you intentionally design the choice to help people? For that, let's head down to Charlotte, North Carolina for an experiment that shows how one simple change can make all the difference.
I mean, this slide just says it all. The old way was a total mess of information overload. A 100-page glossy booklet, probably full of marketing fluff with all the important stuff, like test scores, buried somewhere online. The nudge? A simple one-page fact sheet. That's it. It just cut through all the noise and ranked schools by what mattered, test scores and acceptance rates. Everything was clear, simple, and easy to compare.
And the results were just wow. Parents who got that simple fact sheet ended up choosing schools with test scores that were 70% higher. Think about that. The nudge was so powerful that it made the choices of low-income families look almost identical to those of families earning $65,000 more a year. It didn't just give them information, it gave them confidence. It leveled the playing field.
So we know that clear information is a huge nudge. But what do you do when the problem is deeper? What happens when the actual rules of the game are broken and they're forcing people to act against their own best interests?
This was exactly the problem in Boston and a bunch of other big cities. They used this fancy computer algorithm that was designed to do something that sounds totally fair and reasonable. Try to give as many students as possible their number one first choice school. But this system had a huge hidden flaw.
And that flaw turned the whole process into a game that rewarded something economists have a great name for: strategic misrepresentation. In plain English, it means the best way to win was to lie. To lie about what you really wanted It's like if someone asked you your favorite ice cream, but you knew that if you said chocolate because it's the most popular, you'd probably end up with nothing. So the smart move isn't to be honest, it's to pick a less popular flavor you think you have a shot at getting.
So here's how you had to play the game. If your actual #1 choice was a really popular school, listing it first was a huge gamble you were probably going to lose. And listing it second? That was a total waste of a choice because the system would look at everyone else's first choices before it even glanced at your second choice. The only winning strategy was to not list your favorite school first. You had to pick a less popular school you thought you could get into. The parents with more resources figured this out, and the parents who were just being honest got penalized by the system. It was completely unfair.
Thankfully, a group of really smart economists figured this out and pointed it out to the city. Eventually, Boston was convinced. They completely redesigned their choice architecture and put in a new system that was strategy-proof. The new design actually rewards honesty, which levels the playing field so parents can just focus on finding the right school, not on trying to outsmart a broken system. Okay, so fixing a super complex algorithm is one way to go. But our last story shows that sometimes the most brilliant choice architecture is also the most beautifully simple. It's all about changing the default setting.
This one is just genius. In San Marcos, Texas, the school superintendent wanted more kids to go to college. So what was the nudge? They made it a requirement for high school graduation that every student had to fill out an application to the local community college. Just like that, the default option switched from don't apply to apply.
And get this, they did it with no extra money. Counselors just helped the students fill out the forms. And then they did this brilliant framing exercise. They didn't talk about the abstract joys of higher learning, no. They talked about cars. They literally showed them the difference in lifetime earnings between a high school and a college degree as the difference between driving a Mercedes and driving a Kia. Talk about knowing your audience.
And the result? It was incredible. In a single year, the percentage of students from that high school who went on to a Texas college jumped by 11 percentage points, all from one simple, powerful change to the default.
So when you boil it all down, what's the big lesson here? It's that having choices is great, but it is not enough. What really truly matters is the design of that choice system, the choice architecture. A good design helps us make better decisions. It cuts through the noise, it helps us fight our own biases, and it can set a default that leads to a much better outcome. Ultimately, good design empowers people. And that really brings us to the final thought. We've seen how a well-designed system, a simple nudge, can change the entire trajectory of a student's life. And it just makes you wonder, what other huge, important parts of our lives, from how we save for retirement, to our healthcare, to how we vote, are desperately in need of a better choice architect?